Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is Screen Watching. We watch the shows, we talk about the movies, and talk about the shows and watch the movies, I guess, as well. Folks, big week, long week. Simon is going to take a look at the big movie release of the week, which is The Naked Gun. But he's not going to talk about that in depth. He's hiding that at the end of the podcast for some reason. Instead, he's talking about the movie which bombed in the US and will, come and go in Australia. It's called Eddington. Strap yourself in. The critics' opinion is mixed. I'm going to talk about Long Story Short. It is the new Netflix series from the creative genius behind BoJack Horseman. Folks, it's another cartoon, and I am absolutely there for it. What else have I been watching? Great question. Simon, as I said, has been watching The Naked Gun, and not the classic Leslie Nielsen film, the new one. So he'll talk about that. There's something called Kangaroo Island, which I assume has got nothing to do with ABC Kids' classic animated series Kangaroo Beach. I think it's probably an entirely different thing. I'm taking a trip back in time. No, not 1985. I am going back to the glory years of 2010 for a comedy called She's Out of My League. Have you seen this before? Maybe, maybe not, but you've certainly seen the cover and thought about pressing play, but probably didn't. I did, and I'm here to live through the experience and tell you what happened. Also, Sylvester Stallone, you may know him from a couple of really classic films like Oscar. I'm sure he's made other things as well. He appeared in a 1981 film called Nighthawks. I watched that and, oh my god, sometimes you see a movie and you realise, wait, this might be one of my favourite films of all time. Was that something that happened to me this week? Possibly. Folks, this is Screen Watching.
This is not like TV, only better.
Television! Teacher, mother!
Secret lover.
What, that's it? That's your movie?
Well, I said that I had an idea for a movie.
Dan Barrett and Screen Watchers the world over. Hello everyone, hope you're well. It has been quite an extraordinary week, Dan Barrett. You and I kicked the week off, what seems like a long time ago now, but we hung with the cool people on Saturday night at the Wednesday Cockatoo Island Netflix fan event, and boy, you're not a fan, but you were there and soaking up the atmosphere, and I am a fan, and I loved every minute of it. Got up close with Emma Myers, saw Tim Burton. Generally a good time all round.
Yeah, look, I find it funny that you say we hung with the cool kids, because it was really the two of us talking to each other all night, and then also Travis Johnson sort of floating around, so...
See, now that's interesting, because I'd never watched a single frame of Smallville, so I don't know if that would have swayed me at all. I don't think so. There's other reasons why I love Wednesday so much, but...
Simon, Smallville, it effing sucks.
Hey, there's your poster quote. We really should get on with the show.
We really should. Folks, we're going to take a clip of Eddington.
I am recording this. Fair warning. Is that really necessary? Look, Joe, 6 feet.
Interesting synergy for me and Eddington, which is the new film from Ari Aster, which has finally made its way into Australian cinemas after a bit of a delay. It did the festival circuit down here, and as you pointed out at the top, sort of got a lot of people talking, but not a lot of people watching over in the US. A couple of months back...
When you say a lot of people, like film people, not like people broadly do not know this movie exists.
No, true. A couple of months back, I filled in, or I ticked a film off my shame file, and that film was Robert Altman's Nashville, and I have been very effusive of how much I loved that film and what a terrific watch and a great time capsule piece it was of both 70s cinema and where America was at that point in time. And I was struck, having watched Eddington just last night, how similar this film is to Robert Altman's great Nashville. Now, in Eddington, we have Joaquin Phoenix as Joe Cross, a small-town New Mexico sheriff who decides, because he has a very personal clash with the current mayor, played by Pedro Pascal, that he's going to run for mayor. And what starts to unravel is his life, most specifically because this is all set in the time of COVID, and it is one of the first films, maybe the first film that I've watched, which directly addresses how the life we led during the lockdown impacted society and impacted us, and how all the normal things that we took for granted, whether that's politics or society or family, were impacted by the lockdown and the COVID virus. The film is probably Ari Aster's most conventional storyline, which isn't to say that it's predictable in any way. He has in the past taken some really big stylistic swings which have worked in the case of Hereditary and Midsummer, and maybe haven't worked in the case of Beau is Afraid. And I know you and I differ on that, Dan.
What? Didn't work?
Yeah, it didn't work at all.
That was my film of the year.
Yes, I know, and it didn't work either. But with Eddington, he is working in a setting that is new to him, and it sort of gives him a perspective on American society that I didn't expect to see from Ari Aster. And it's such a contemporary tale. I'm keen to see how well this film ages, because it being so stocked with images and sensations and emotions that had to do with the COVID period, it's going to become, much like Nashville, a real sort of time capsule film of American life. When I say it's infused with the how life was when COVID hit, it really does lean into every aspect of that life. How important our screens became, the phones and the laptops that were our constant companions through that time. How quickly attitudes and mores could change based on what was coming through the internet. Also, at the time, the whole Black Lives Matter movement was peaking, and that is addressed in this film. The emergence of ultra right-wing ideologies, as fueled by, the lockdown environment and what the internet brings, is also addressed in this. It's got so many interesting points. It doesn't necessarily make it an easy film to watch, and I totally get why people maybe didn't want to engage with this in the cinema, because at 2.5 hours, and with a lot of these really terrible characters doing terrible things to each other, it's not a pleasant watch at times. Of course, Joaquin Phoenix is terrific as the lead, and he brings a lot of his Joaquin energy to this. But it's a film that I haven't stopped thinking about since I watched it, which took me by surprise, because I did read that it was a dud over in the US and couldn't get off the ground, and I don't think that's unusual for a director like Ari Aster when he takes really big, sort of ambitious swings. I'd rather have these movies out there than not have them made at all. Whether it's successful in what it tries to do, that's up for personal debate, but I found it a really interesting and compelling look at American society at a very specific point in time.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty keen to give this one a look. You completely lost me with anything that you had to say in terms of your credibility when you started attacking the fantastic cinema opus that is Beau is Afraid.
Also a film that made about $1.75 at the movies, so nobody saw that film.
I don't think it made $1.75. I'm sure it lost $1.75 and then had a few zeros on the end of it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yes.
But you know what? The quality of a film is not judged by the box office it takes, but really it is about the fact that I could not stop thinking and talking about that movie for, when did it come out now? Because from then till now.
3 years ago, yeah. I'm keen to see what you think of Eddington, because it's definitely a more, conventional, yes, in the way the story's told, and even in the way the film's shot. He doesn't sort of lean into the heavily stylized world that he created for any of his other films, quite frankly. Not just Beau is Afraid, but also Midsummer and Hereditary. This one has a sun-bleached sort of New Mexico look and feel to it, which, obviously the setting demands that, but his direction could have gone in all sorts of direction. It's very gruesome in parts. I should point out that the ending takes a very, very dark turn. And you'll be glad to know there's some substantial peen in this one. Here on the podcast, we have in the past looked at some films as... Don't shake your head at me. You're the one that always brings it up. No, so this is for your benefit.
I'm just confused that you seem to think that I'm actively seeking out peen. I'm just an open person who's like, It's worth noting how much pain there is in cinema these days, but I'm not,
See, now I thought, is that really Joaquin's pain, or is, because very often you'll find that they have these full frontal shots, and then you learn later on that it's
stunt pain.
It could be stunt pain, could be CGI pain. It's Hollywood's an amazing place. So, yes, do check out Eddington. I think it's definitely worth a look. It's very anxiety inducing, because you do understand just how much PTSD we all probably have with regards to that COVID period and the impact it had obviously the tragic impact it had on so many people, but also the overall sense of change that we went through and the society that we lived in at the time, seeing it all play out here on screen, and when characters start to get a cough and when they argue about wearing a mask and all these sort of social interactions that we went through back then that maybe we pushed to the back of our mind all come to the fore again with this film. So it is a very anxiety-inducing movie.
Speaking of old wounds, this takes us to the new Netflix animated series. It's called Long Story Short. I'm going to give you the synopsis and then we're going to dive into the clip. The synopsis is as follows. A dysfunctional family's shared history, inside jokes and old wounds are explored in this adult animated comedy spanning multiple years. Here's the clip.
Time is moving too fast, and my children need to start taking things more seriously. Mom!
Kids, can you not, please, for one day?
What
There's
kids?
bereavement happening in the front.
Yoshi is pinching me. I should suffer in silence?
Yes, that is what life is about.
Long Story Short, it's the new series from Raphael Waxberg. People know him as the creator of BoJack Horseman. Now, BoJack Horseman, it was 2016 it came out, one of those really early Netflix originals. It really surprised a lot of people by being not a Family Guy wannabe in a way that a lot of the adult shows were sort of orientated around that point. Instead, this was a show which it certainly seemed just as loud and obnoxious as most of those wannabe Family Guy shows, but it actually started to explore some really interesting ideas about loss and self-identity, about trauma, just really exploring some really sort of dark psychological issues. I
was late to come around to it for that very reason, because I thought it was just another Adult Swim type shock comedy.
Yeah.
And then having watched a few episodes, I thought, okay, this has got something to say.
Yeah, and it really does. So yeah, like that was a really surprising program. I got to meet Raphael Waxberg and found him in real life to be just as thoughtful and interesting and, kind of funny. And, it was kind of...
I love RBW.
Yeah, really sort of interesting guy. He went on to do another show a couple of years later for Prime Video. It was called Undone. And this is something that Simon and I talk about sort of with semi-regularity on this podcast. It was a rotoscoped animated program which allowed our protagonist to explore her own trauma, where it allowed her to live like her day-to-day life, but then you go into like her sort of mental dream state from time to time. And the scenes would sort of blend backwards and forwards amongst each other, and it was a really fascinating, smart, clever use of animation in order to be able to explore the real versus the transcendental sort of dream state that
Terrific
people
show.
enter
It's
into.
called Undone. If you haven't watched it, go back and stream it. It's terrific.
Yeah, really fantastic stuff. So this is his third TV program. He's got like this sort of limited filmography. And so when I found out that Raphael Waxberg has a new TV program, coming off the back of BoJack Horseman, having done Undone, I want to see what he was going to do next, because, this is like one of the under-recognized, I think, great sort of auteurs of the streaming TV age. So did Long Story Short live up to the expectation that I'd set upon this?
It's a big build-up.
Absolutely did.
Wow.
Yeah, completely.
That's a plus. Good.
So I'm going to sort of detour a little bit before I talk about the show. While I was watching this, I kept on being reminded of this Simpsons episode. It's called Lost Star Lisa, and this is a season 9 episode, so it's right before the show went off the rails. It never went off the rails, it just stopped being good. But it's like, I think it's the season finale.
I know you're
of season
prodding
9.
the bear with that, and I'm not going to react. Just keep going.
It just is what it is. So look, the episode, and I don't remember it that well, it's been years since I've seen it, but the episode is the one where Lisa goes to the museum. She wants Marge to take her. Marge is busy. Homer just gives her like permission. Just go by yourself. Like, it's fine. Okay, and like she's too young to do that. But she goes off. She ends up having an adventure. I know they're on like a cherry picker at one point.
She has to catch buses there, doesn't she? And she has to
catch buses. It's scary and whatever. Homer ends up rescuing her, which I think is where the cherry picker comes involved in it. And so the two of them have like this sort of big sort of adventure. And Lisa at the end, and as I said, it's been a while since I've seen it. I think she says something about how, you're going to be upset with me because we went and did that. And Homer's like, no, quite the opposite. And starts explaining about how it's really important in life to be able to muck up and to, have adventures and experience the world and that sort of thing. Now, the general sort of idea of that isn't like wild or really outside the realm of what you might see in like other TV programs. It's not like a distinct sort of unique program, unique sort of story. But there was just something about that episode that I kept on thinking about while watching Long Story Short. Because Long Story Short is a series which kind of explores sort of stories like that. It's like little sort of moments in time. But what I think Long Story Short, where the real exceptional, interesting element of it is that it'll have episode 3, for example, the youngest, so it's a family, there's 3 kids. The youngest son in it is age 22 in the 3rd episode. And so when it's about him being sort of a little bit lost in life, and he can't really sort of, he's trying to find an identity, he's trying to find like a career path, and he finds himself in a sales job where he's selling sort of mattresses in a can. Kind of like, a koala mattress that comes out of a box, but it's like mattresses in a can. And obviously things go hilariously wrong. But like he learns some life lessons through it. But like that episode is set in, I want to say it's like maybe 2006 or something. But that episode's in 2006. Other episodes are in like the late 90s. It's in 2022. Every episode is set at a different point in the life of this family. So you get this really interesting insight into where characters are going, where they've come from, and every episode sort of intersects. So the first episode is the aforementioned 22-year-old youngest brother, back when he was having his bar mitzvah, which is, when you're 13, I guess, as a Jewish person?
Yep.
So
we
he's
should
13.
point out, this is a very Jewish...
Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment.
All right, yeah. I'm just looking at all the talent involved.
Simon had never heard of this program up until about 5 minutes ago, so he's coming up with this with a lot of expertise.
You've got me excited. This is your review. I'm enthralled. It's got a couple of my favourites in it as well, which we'll get to.
Yeah, we'll get to that, Simon. Just hold tight. Hold tight. Stop reading Wikipedia. Because IMDb's garbage. Look, so... we go in the first episode, it explores his bar mitzvah, and so on the day of his bar mitzvah, his older brother has come back home, who's like, he's an early adult at that point, in his early 20s, and he's brought home like a serious girlfriend who's meeting the family for the first time. So you got the story that juxtaposed the young kid becoming a man, but then also this sort of woman entering the family, and as we learn, she gets married to the guy later on, and so we see her regularly throughout the program sort of going on. But she gives the mother a red vase just as a thanks for letting me sort of spend the weekend here and whatever, just a nice gift. But that red vase is in the background of other scenes, and so it's kind of as it sort of jumps backwards and forwards through time, just these elements that get introduced into the story become part of the tapestry and history of this family.
And so it's really lovely. I'm really enthused by this.
Yeah. And so it is kind of lovely. It's also pretty funny, and it's a very charming program, but it's just a really unique way to tell a story. Now, it's not super unique in that there is the live-action TV drama from a few years ago called This Is Us, which kind of explored a family from a very similar way. So they're not treading fresh ground with this one, but I guess being an animated series that lets them sort of be a little bit more sort of creative in terms of the sort of architecture of a world that you're building, and just be a bit more sort of detailed and a bit more specific about things. Like that red vase probably would... Well, I was going to say that red vase probably wouldn't play a role in This Is Us so much without it being really overt, but in an animated show you can just kind of show it in the background and you can start playing around with the structures that way.
Is he borrowing
really
his animation style from BoJack
Horseman,
or has he got a full freshness?
Just hold tight, Simon. We've got elements to get through.
I'm contributing. I'm trying to
Stop asking questions.
It proves I'm listening.
So as Simon already took up time a moment ago saying, this does have a very strong Jewish theme through it. This is a heavily Jewish family, and with that comes every, sometimes rightfully earned, Jewish stereotype that sort of plays through this. But when you're actually watching the program, you'll find that the voice cast lend themselves to absolutely the experience of this. So it's a lot of, how do we say this? Look, I'm going to read through some of the names in this one. Paul Reiser plays the patriarch of the family. Right. Paul Reiser, a bit of his shtick is, a little bit of the, the Jewish neuroses.
Here we go.
Yeah, that's my Paul Reiser. Ben Feldman's in this. Max Greenfield from New Girl. Ben Feldman being the guy that played Ginsberg in Mad Men and also from Superstore. Abby Jacobson from Broad City. Who else we got? Lisa Edelstein, who was in every sitcom in the 90s going in through the 2000s.
Big plus, the name I go to because A, she's got the most beautiful photo on IMDb, and B, she was I feel full after the risotto on Seinfeld. That was Lisa Edelstein. So, yes, always watch what she's doing.
Yeah, but as like she was in Seinfeld, but she was also in every single sitcom through the 90s, 2000s.
Just goes on forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I love her, but I love the cast in this one generally, except for Abby Jacobson, who I just do not care for. But everyone else really, really good. The guest stars every week. There are people that you absolutely will know the voice of, and you'll spend most of the episode going, okay, who is that? And it's like, oh, it's Dave Franco. So, it's kind of that sort of level of guest stars sort of coming through on it. Basically, what you got here is an incredibly charming, very relatable, very interesting family drama comedy that has some really heartfelt moments. You're going to get some proper laughs out of this program. It is fantastic. Coming off the back of seeing King of the Hills series return a couple of weeks ago, which kind of treads in sort of similar waters, but doesn't have that. Yeah. It doesn't have that gimmick of sort of jumping backwards and forwards through time, but does have an interesting element of we've seen these characters like a decade ago and we've sort of jumped forward. There's a time element to that as well. It's a really interesting time for animation right now, doing sort of smart, heartfelt family comedy dramas.
Dan Barrett, I'm going to leave this podcast momentarily and watch as many of these episodes as I can because it sounds like something really good. Look at us coming with two interesting review topics to our segment. Of course, this does lead us to the next part of the podcast, one which is very popular with the listener. What else have you been watching? I'm going to take the lead on this one very quickly. 2 new movies are in the cinemas, along with Eddington. In fact, it was a big week for movies. I didn't get to see Relay, which is the new Lily James, I want to say, one of the movies.
That is the one I actually really want to see this week.
Yeah, I just couldn't get along to it. They didn't do screenings of it for us critic types.
So what, you'd have to actually pay for a ticket?
Please, no way. I'm a member of several organisations that get free movie tickets, so I haven't paid for a movie ticket since Empire Strikes Back. What else have you been watching? I'm glad you asked. Kangaroo Island is the new Australian film in cinemas. One of 2, actually. There's also one called Primitive War, which is the dinosaurs versus soldiers malarkey, but it's a lot of fun. I have seen that. But Kangaroo Island is the story of a family who live on South Australia's Kangaroo Island. Now, I was able to interview the director and writer of this married couple through the week, and they said that if you don't live in South Australia, you maybe don't know the sort of the legend of Kangaroo Island, but it's considered like a float.
It's no Maslin Beach, I'll tell you that much.
No, it's apparently they consider it like a floating zoo. In that it's got a very small population of people, but a very large population of, yes, kangaroos, obviously, but also all sorts of wildlife, which got me worried that this was going to be one of those Australian films where they cut away to a shot of a kookaburra or a koala sitting in a tree. But the film kind of earns that because it tells the story of a family. The patriarch, played by Eric Thompson, gathers the 2 sisters together, Adelaide Clemens and Rebecca Breed. And you'll remember Rebecca Breed from playing Clarice Starling in the Clarice TV show a couple of years back. They return to Kangaroo Island and have to sort of settle the affairs because Eric Thompson has a terminal disease and a whole lot of family trauma is thrown up in this. Not as dark and depressing as it sounds. Actually got quite a nice light touch to it. It kind of struck me a little bit like Terms of Endearment, one of my favourite films from the 80s, which tackled family dynamic and impending tragedy, but with the lightness of touch, as you'd expect a James L. Brooks film to do. So Kangaroo Island, and it's beautiful to look at, of course, shot off the South Australian coast. So Kangaroo Island's in cinemas now. Also in cinemas now...
Also, sorry, I just feel the need to drop this in here. Simon, person who doesn't pay for movie tickets, how much are you paying to go and see Kangaroo Island at cinemas today?
Oh, whatever an adult ticket is, $22.50 or a bit more, $23 something.
$27.50.
$27.50 for you. There you go. I'd say it's worth it. Probably not worth it is The Naked Gun. Now, there was so much buzz on this, which started to get me a little bit sort of saying, why are they trying so hard to push this? I get that it's a marketable sort of concept, Liam Neeson goofing it up when he's not a comic. It's kind of what made Leslie Nielsen famous in the first one. And, of course, Flying High. But Naked Gun... it just doesn't have those zingy moments of real sort of unbridled hilarity. This one sort of cares where the jokes come in. In Airplane or Flying High as we know it, and in the original Naked Gun, it was just rat-a-tat-tat. They didn't care if the jokes landed perfectly, because when they did, they're very funny. They just kept throwing the jokes at you non-stop. There's maybe half a dozen moments in the new Naked Gun which have that sense of unexpected, surprising comedy, which really sort of catch you off guard and make you giggle. But there's also moments where they kind of get bogged down by the story. These movies aren't about story. And I got to say, I just didn't find Liam Neeson that funny in the lead of this. Some of the situations he got into, where he's going to poop his pants, or where he's, dressed as a little girl to stop a bank robbery, all those sort of things, they're kind of stupid. And it's amiably stupid, which will be enough for some people. I just didn't think it was out and out. I don't think it earned its right to be remade under the Naked Gun banner. It needed the Abraham Zucker input to make it a real classic. So it's out there, and you'll get a few giggles, but it's no Naked Gun.
Yeah, look, I'm a big fan of Zaz, and when I saw the trailer for this, I was less than impressed. I really wasn't into it. I didn't find it funny. I found a lot of, particularly sort of US-based sort of culture writers and whatnot on podcasts talking about, this is hilarious. And I was like, but the trailer wasn't hilarious. And then I've subsequently gone on to talk about how funny the movie was. And so I'm going into this one with great skepticism. So I'm not going to spend my $27.50 to go and see this at the cinema.
No,
I'm
nor
definitely
should you.
going to wait until it turns up at home.
And we chatted on the ferry home from Wednesday Island the other night how we've been reading the oral history of flying high, the oral history of airplane, called Surely You Can't Be Serious, which is this terrific book and a terrific audio book that we touched on. And it just shows how intrinsically combined the comedic viewpoints of the Zuckers and the Abrahams were that led up to Flying High, and that then became the Naked Gun, that it was lightning in a bottle in terms of comedic visions. This remake doesn't have any of that. It's like they're just trying to copy what the Zaz people do. And it's impossible to copy that. So many people have tried to copy that wacky, unbridled zaniness from those early days, and it just hasn't worked. And it doesn't really work here, although it's not without a few giggles. There he is. Look at that. He's got the book. That's research for you. Surely You Can't Be Serious, the true story of Airplane.
Yeah.
It's a terrific read.
It is. Although, don't go and buy the book. Get the audiobook instead.
Yes, you were saying the audiobook the other night features all the people who contribute to the oral history that's in the book, which I think is fascinating. The Bill Haders and everyone, really.
Yeah, everyone. Very quickly, let's wind this out. I was just basically a bit cranky. Didn't really want to watch many TV shows this week.
I can tell.
Oh, I got through... Well, there were two TV programs. There was one that I was very keen to see, and one that I had a eye of being it okay, but it turns out that Hostage just isn't very good, and I didn't think it was worth talking about.
All right, fine.
But I watched a few films through the week, and so I wanted to talk about two films that I watched. I checked out the 2010 movie She's Out of My League. Now, this is the film that, as I said, people have probably sort of thought about maybe pressing play on, but never had. That's certainly been my experience. Jay Baruchel was the star of this back when Jay Baruchel was I don't know if he was ever a bankable star, but he was certainly someone that I think people thought maybe this guy could be a star at some point. And then this film...
He was coming off Knocked Up. I think that was sort of the...
He was in a lot of those Apatow films. It's like the third or fourth banana.
Yes. And very likeable. We've spoken of the Baruchel in the past.
Look, I love Jay Baruchel. I've actually thought, I'm going to just give this away because I'm just never going to do it. But I've always wanted to do a podcast called The Jay Baruchel Show.
Right.
And The Jay Baruchel Show would be people who are like, hey, I like Jay Baruchel. And they'll be like, I thought Jay Baruchel would be hosting this program called The Jay Baruchel Show. But then they'll be surprised to find it's me and whoever my co-host is. And it's literally just going through episode by episode the films and TV shows of Jay Baruchel.
But I don't think he's done a whole lot. Certainly not a whole lot people
He's done more than you think, but less than he should have.
To make a podcast of it, I know.
But
you're right. This was his big roll of the dice, like movie star wise, which I saw. I saw this at the movies. A big LSE fan. Love the Jay Baruchel. Well, not a big LSE fan. There's certain qualities that she possesses that made me want to go and see this. But otherwise, don't know.
Well, that's the entire premise of this movie.
Yes.
So the premise of this film is that you've got this guy. He's in his early to mid 20s. He's pretty average in every way. He never really made sort of anything of his life. He sort of lives in Pittsburgh. he's never really left Pittsburgh.
Very
but
still
he works,
tied to his working class family and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and he works as a TSA agent. So he's not really living the dream, but, you know, he's getting by. He's got a bunch of friends. Like, he just kind of lives life. But anyway, he ends up sort of meeting this woman through his work, who is just a knockout bombshell played by Alice Eve. And through events, they get to know each other, and so they start dating. But as the title of the film suggests, she's out of his league because she's gorgeous and he's just like an average sort of schlub. But, you know, somehow they make it work, and it's about, you know, how they make that work. It's actually surprisingly quite funny. There's some moments in it. Sorry, the first half of the film is surprisingly quite funny. The second half gets a little bit flat, but broadly, there's a couple of gags in it which are actually just like really clever, fun jokes. And what's really great is that they never over-egg anything. A lot of these jokes just sort of quiet things sort of happening in the background that they kind of allude to, but it never really becomes like a big thing. So like they go on their first date, for example, and he's dressed in this terrible suit with this red jacket. Anyway, they're there, and it's like a bit of an awkward first date because he realizes that, you know, she's out of his league. And then, like, her ex-boyfriend stops by the table, and, like, it's all this sort of standard stuff. But the quiet joke that's happening through the entire scene is that all the waiters in the background are also wearing red jackets. And so he'll be there, you know, someone's left their purse behind, so he goes chasing after them, and they want to tip him because he's wearing the red jacket. But they never actually say, oh, because you're dressed like that. It's just kind of implied. And it's nice. It's funny. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's subtle, but it's certainly, it's not, they're not smashing over the head with a hammer on it.
Sure.
Yeah.
This
film's everything you kind of expect it is, but it just kind of, it elevates just a little bit here and there, and it's kind of good.
It reminds me of maybe, and I'm only just saying this off the top of my head, like much of what I do on this podcast, it's a last great period of big screen comedies, and it doesn't mean they're particularly great comedies, because you would throw the Forgetting Sarah Marshalls, you would throw the Role Models, you would throw those sort of films that Seth Rogen, well, coming off the back of Knocked Up, and I mentioned that earlier, which was a huge hit, and all of the players involved without Jason Segel and Seth Rogen and Jay Baruchel all got a roll of the dice based on the success that film had, and for me that was kind of like that last period of you could see a comedy at the movies and have a good time, kind of theatrical feeling. And
yeah, when movies didn't cost $27.50.
They were still pretty pricey. Now, let's get on to your next one, which I can talk at length about because I'm well versed in this little film.
I mean, let's not talk at length about it, but let's just give a really quick sort of promotion of it. It's a film called NIGHTHAWKS. This is a 1981 film that stars one Sylvester Stallone and Billy D. Williams.
Oh,
I did not realize Billy D. Williams was in this.
Oh, yeah, and the rest of the cast. There's so many people in this.
Okay, you also got Lindsay Wagner's in there. Rutger Hauer's the bad guy in it.
Yeah. Persis Kambata, the late Persis Kambata, who passed away very sadly due to the big C, but she was the bald lady in the Star Trek movie.
Yeah. Yeah, attractive lady. But this one is a early 1980s set cop film dealing with international terrorism coming through. But it's just every bit that sort of 1980s grimy New York that you really want to see from one of these films. Yep. And that's why I watched it. I was like, I want to see a grimy 80s New York cop film. And this delivered in every single way. People will talk about the... Look, I mean, this film is what? 44 years old at this point. I think we can talk about the end of it.
Oh,
I'm going to do it.
Blow the ending. All right.
Okay. So
I won't take any responsibility for this.
The shtick in this movie is that Sylvester Stallone and Billy D. Williams, as cops, they are regularly out on the streets and will dress up in costumes, not in like a ridiculous sort of Fletch kind of a way. But it's sort of things like the opening scene, for example, is a woman is walking down the streets. Some guys go to mug her and possibly rape her. Like they never really,
horrible.
Never quite gets that far. But suddenly you realize that it's not actually a woman walking down the street, but it's Sylvester Stallone in a dress. And then suddenly, like they give chase and like it becomes a sort of action sequence. So it's kind of like them sort of staging scenarios, which some might call entrapment, but others would, argue it's just good police work.
It's 80s New York. Let's let it slide.
But look, so they keep on sort of dressing up sort of in costumes, and that's kind of the way that they're, operating as police. So when you get to the final scene where Rutger Hauer, like everything's gone pear-shaped, and so Rutger Hauer's going to sort of wreak his revenge by turning up to Stallone's girlfriend's house, and, probably murderer is kind of the intention. And so he comes up to the front door and he can see that she's in the kitchen down this sort of long hallway. And like the scene goes on for a little bit, and you see like her sort of move backwards and forwards sort of across this doorway as like he's going down the hall. And I'm looking at this going, wait a sec, we haven't seen her face. This is absolutely going to be Sylvester Stallone in the dress.
Did you know? Did you pick it?
Because that was the shtick. Like, it was kind of, you know, I thought it was fairly obvious. But I was like, they've got to do it. They've got to do it. And then there's this moment where he grabs the woman, he pulls her around, and then it's Stallone and he starts shooting. Yeah. Oh my God. Fantastic. But I had so much fun watching this movie. I had a great time reading about the making of this movie, where director Bruce Malmuth, it wasn't necessarily the most successful pairing of director and actor.
Not at all. By all accounts, Stallone did a lot of the shooting of this. He went back and filmed a lot of it. Yeah,
very much so. So it became very much a Sylvester Stallone film. Look, I think this is fantastic cinema. If you haven't seen it, I know I've given away the end, but that's fine. Don't worry about that. Just go with the film. Everything about this works.
Is it on one of the streamers?
It's on Prime Video at the moment.
Oh, great. Do it. Yeah, absolutely. It's probably right.
Every week now, I'm going to Prime Video and digging up 2 to 3, like just classic crime films from the 70s and 80s and just having a great time.
It's catching you off guard, isn't it? Because you had the same reaction to Pelham 1, 2, 3 a couple of months back, and now you're doing Nighthawks. These are all the films of my youth.
Bear in mind, the ones that I'll talk about on this podcast and the ones I add to my letterbox are the ones that I don't give up on 10 to 15 minutes in.
Have there been many of those? What have you given up on?
Dude, so many films.
Oh,
there are
really?
so many just terrible movies.
No, you've got to lay into it. I saw Nighthawks at the movies. This was one of the first R-rated movies I saw at the movies. This and Mad Max. I'm trying to think what other R-rated ones. But yeah, this was rated R at the movies. I can't remember why. Maybe because of some of the sexual violence in it. But at this point in time, the big draw card for me was... I would say Lindsay Wagner in a film. She looks beautiful in this, and this is one of her only sort of big screen roles. She was most famous as the Bionic Woman and a whole lot of TV movie stuff. But and Rutger Hauer, this was on or around the same time as Blade Runner, so he was just starting to make an impact. And we should point out that neither Blade Runner nor Nighthawks did any box office business, so his reputation and his legend came well after this. So yeah, I love Nighthawks so much, and a great soundtrack. So if you can get the music for it on Spotify or something, do listen to it. It's got some excellent guitar licks.
Yeah, another film that I saw recently on Prime Video was The Mean Season.
Yeah, so which was Russell. You mentioned that, yeah.
Oh, we did talk about that one on this podcast. It was about a month or two ago, but like that's the sort of thing that I'm just sticking up regularly. And The Mean Season, I wavered on. That was pretty close to getting turned off at some point because it's not great. But
love it.
Ticked a few boxes.
Significant film. All right, well,
significant film. Come on, Simon.
One of Canada's fine. I think that's a Canadian film, actually. Isn't it directed by what's his name from Canada? Can't remember.
We're talking about Philip Borsos, who's the Australian-born Canadian film director.
That's right, he is. Yes. Wonderful, good podcast. Happy to talk old movies. Quite happy to talk some new movies this week. Eddington and your animated series, Long Story Short, on the Netflix. 2 things you should be watching. Thank you, Dan Barrett. Let's get on with our lives.
Okay, Simon Foster. If people want to find Simon Foster, you can do that where? Simon Foster, ?
Screen-space. The newsletter is available for subscription on the Substack. We also have the website. All things screen watching you can find at Screen Watching Podcast on Facebook, at Screen Watching on the YouTube. Give us an email at screenwatchingpodcast@gmail.com. Always love to hear your feedback on what we talk about. Dan Barrett, your writings?
Alwaysbewatching.com. It's a newsletter that comes out Monday through Friday and Saturdays and occasionally Sundays. It's got all the stories about TV streaming and, other screen-based stuff. Shout out to anyone who, if you find me on the street, grab my phone off me and see if you can adjust the screen settings on it, because I had to do a phone replacement yesterday and everything looks a bit weird and I can't quite get my head around what Apple are doing to adjust these settings, because the setting it looks like it should be isn't doing anything, and oh my god, it's a frustration. Folks,
problems. Okay.
I think black people have problems with their phones as well, Simon. I'm pretty sure. Folks, this has been Screen Watching. We'll be back next week. We'll see you then.